So I think it's going. I hope everyone can hear me. Thank you all for joining us today for our special earned value panel of three-member panel today. So the only announcement that I have, non-panel related, is that the election is going to be coming out very soon for the officers and board for the next year for our section. So watch out for that email and please vote so that we can make sure that we have official board and official officers. So because I want to spend a lot of time with the panel, that's all I had, the announcements I had today. And I think I'm going to start off, well, first of all, I just want to say that thank the panel members for coming today. We have three members of the industry that have a lot of experience with earned value, and that's kind of the topic today that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to kick it off by just trying to have each one kind of do just a brief introduction, if you want to say whatever maybe certifications that you have that are related to the industry, and then I would like for each of you to kind of maybe make a quick statement about kind of what you feel the importance of earned value is. Jeff, let's start with you, please.
Hi, Jeff Taylor with ACM. I do have a certification in earned value through AACE. I have some project experience using earned value, mostly as an owner side for working on industrial projects.
Hello everyone, Sam Al-Sharif with DTE. I've been with DTE started with DTE back in 2012. I have a PMP from PMI. I also have a PhD in civil engineering construction management, focusing on project controls, scheduling, estimating, cost control. I teach several classes at Eastern Michigan University and Lawrence Tech University. And for earned value, I have an experience with when I started with DTE at Fermi 2. I don't know if everyone familiar with Fermi 2 nuclear power plant down in Monroe, where we heavily used earned value management. And I will be sharing some lessons learned hopefully tonight with you. So, thank you. See you.
Thanks.
Nathan Ouellette, former member of ACM. I am currently working for Consumers Energy as the scheduling manager over the gas and the renewables side. Cleaning up the mess that Alex left when he left. So, no, earned value, currently the projects that we're requiring all of our major projects to be cost loaded, and we're doing earned value reports. We're just now starting to get into it. Specifically myself, I've been working on a lot of the decommissioning projects we have for our coal plants, and we've got our contractors doing that, as well as a couple different ways that we're doing it ourselves. So I'll be speaking to that tonight as well.
All right, cool. Thank you. Just a kickoff question that I like to do, and then I'll open it up to the audience. My kickoff question would just be, what do you feel like is the greatest benefit of implementing earned value on a project or a series of projects? Samer, you want to start it off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's I think the most benefit to see how the estimate, the schedule, the forecast, or the cash flow are all connected together, tied together in one system, and instead of having the estimate in one system, the schedule in another system, and the forecast or the cash flow in another system. Now we'll talk about the challenges between integrating all of these systems together. But once you have them together and see the impact of one objective or attribute to the other, like if something happened to the schedule, the impact on cost, going back to the estimate, that's I think the most benefit you will get from implementing earned value management.
Will you repeat the question?
The greatest benefit to implementing earned value on a project.
So one interesting thing that we're doing is we're doing on a program level that's a new project every single year. So we can measure performance on this program from one year to the next and kind of identify how we're trending and what's changed from one year to the next. But the benefit you have is that really you can track the performance of the project in a couple different ways, whether it be from a cost side or whether it be from a schedule side. You know, we're not quite to the point where we're integrating the estimate portion of that as well, but we're working on that. So just that progress and being able to assess where we're at in terms of the health of a project.
Anything to add, Jeff?
I was gonna say the same thing. The health of the project, really kind of have a heartbeat on it, what you're doing as far as against your planned schedule and planned budget, understanding your productivity and where the project's gonna forecast you to end with both costs and schedule.
I have other prepared questions, but if anyone has anything that they want to specifically ask our panel, I'll open it up, but otherwise I'll move on to my next one if anyone doesn't have anything. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
So just for the panel, particularly the owner guys, what's the biggest hurdle that you guys have to overcome to be able to implement a good earned value system?
I mean, we're finding that a lot of the people that we're getting into this place have never done it before. So first of all is training. Second of all is then incorporating that into our schedule. And the third is reaching our intended audience. They, you know, specifically the project managers or some of the other projects, they just don't understand what the data that they're looking at. So really our challenge now is on the reporting side. How do we make it visually accessible for them to understand what we're really trying to show to them? I would say that's probably our biggest challenge right now.
Yeah, I would like to add to that, like, biggest thing, training. I would definitely agree with that. And this can impact how you build the whole system for, you know, for how to report earned value management. It's like once you get it right, the information that you need for the maintenance to report on the metrics, it's huge. It's like you need a lot of maintenance on a weekly basis just to keep the information flow to the right people or to the right audience.
So for me, I think the biggest challenge is putting in that effort up front to determine your scope of work and get that all squared away and all the man hours it takes to actually plan that out and understand your scope of work, because when you end up having changes, earned value gets very hard to manage. So it's really getting everything planned out in the beginning.
Thanks. Jeff?
How deep do you guys go on when you integrate cost and schedule? Do you just look at man hours and total cost, or do you get down into, like, let's say concrete, you get down into formwork and rebar and placing concrete and all that sort of stuff?
When I've done that before, I've done it by the skilled trade level, like
Down to that level?
Yeah.
Is that easier, a lot more complicated? Is it for
It
program?
aligns with your schedule.
Got it.
You know.
For small projects, it's probably okay, but the larger, big ones, you've got to build assemblies.
You're right.
You guys tell me.
Yeah, good to see you, Jeff, first.
Yeah,
Nice to see you. We were buddies in DTE. So yeah, I mean, the lower level you get to, you will get more accuracy. However, you're making your life more miserable, I think, in for earned value management, because the amount of information and the details that you will require from your own team, in-house team, and the contractors are like tremendous, right? And even like the contract type will impact what information you will get from the contractors. So this is one of the biggest challenges in DTE that we faced. Is like if we have a fixed price contract and you're asking the contractor to provide their resource plan or their breakdown of the cost, they're like, look, what do you need that? Like you have a fixed price, you have this date that will deliver, why you need the information? So it's one of the biggest challenges, like in the lower level of details.
Yeah, we've all gotten schedules from contractors on the back of a napkin before. So, I mean, honestly, how do you ask that contractor to then break down the cost on a per activity level? But, I mean,
The hammer.
yeah, right? So, yes, I mean, there's ways to track it by activity level, but if you want to break that activity level into however many different contractors you want, it just depends on what, like Jeff said, what effort you want to put into it, and specifically, you know, how detailed are your activities? Do you have really small duration activities that you can like really dig deep into performance on from an earned value perspective? So It's really what effort you want to put into it up front and what really truly brings value to that project. You know, are the man hours you're spending managing that worth the outcome that you're getting from doing that way?
You know, I've thought that before. Sometimes you feel like you can overplan and spend way more time than you would have just said, get this job done.
Right.
Like on a small job or something.
Yeah.
Of the three, so like of estimate, schedule, and cost, which one of those three elements is really, from a requirement standpoint, drives earned value for you guys? Do you need to make sure your cost is built to fit into a certain schedule model, or do you need to fit your schedule to fit into your estimate model? Like which one kind of drives the other?
So let me share like what we did at Fermi too, like I just mentioned in the earlier. So our process used to be like we develop the estimate and we have level 1 schedule, the high level schedule. Once the estimate is developed, we take the estimates and we load it into the schedule. Now the challenge that we have to load it into the schedule, whatever the tools that you're using, P6 or Microsoft Project, is to get the distribution, the cost distribution right, because this will be your baseline, which earned value, the SPI and CPI will be calculated based on that baseline. So if you don't get it right from the beginning, everything after that, like will be garbage, like garbage in, garbage out, because your baseline should be reflecting the project plan exactly. So we take the estimate, we put it in P6 with the project manager, with the project team to forecast like the time phase budget, if you will, right? Now the challenge sometimes from the system itself comes is like you have limitations in the system, like how you come up with this time phase budget, because P6, if you're not using resources, if you have fixed price contract or you do not know the exact, resource usage or plan for the project, will be how you build this distribution in P6, because P6 doesn't allow you, there is not enough flexibility to build that curve. So you have to play with P6. You have to have like the right skills, the right resources to build, the right baseline for the project. Once this built, it will be transferred to be your forecast, the cost. So I would say all of them are related. There is like the estimate should be right, the schedule should be right, the cost will be like and an output from the estimate, integrating the estimate and the schedule together. Once you have them and you have the baseline, now the information that you receive, if you're reporting on a weekly basis, the information that you receive on a weekly basis will impact your output in the SPI and CPI. So if someone is missing information, missing updates, if you don't get the actual hours, if you're using resource loaded, will impact the results. And if you're reporting weekly, I don't know if like everyone like have the same process, but our cost in DTE, our cost system is a monthly process, right? You get the progress payments or the invoices from the contractors on a monthly basis, and we're required to report on a weekly basis to our management. So we came up with a term called estimated actuals, and at the end of the month we have the actuals, right? So we're playing the system a little bit to come up with the metrics, and the PMs has to come up with on a weekly basis, we think the contractor spent 20 grand. At the end of the month they spend, for example, for that week 40 grand. And the PM get frustrated because they have to explain why did he or she estimated 20 grand and the actuals came in like 40 grand. So I would say like all of them are related together. It's a very tough process, I would say.
So I'm more used to starting like with the estimate and making sure that's kind of what we're working with before it goes into the schedule. And then there's also kind of, hey, let's bring the pipe fitters in here and go through each of these line items and say what are the hours on each task, so you can calculate actual productivity.
I mean, we don't incorporate estimating as much as the counterparts here are. We're working primarily with our cost folks, and I think it's a real opportunity from our perspective to take our baseline estimate and then measure performance against that, and to improve our estimating department as a whole. But once they do their estimate, it's like now it's your guys' job to track the earned value on a project. So I do think we do have an opportunity there, but from a scheduling perspective, I'm going to answer your question and just say schedule. Great.
Andrew, I think you had a question, right?
Yeah, so I now more because, but the first, like, how do you use earned value, like in your industry? Can you just maybe back up a step and explain a little bit more, like how you're using the information?
I'll go first on that one. So a couple different ways. I mean, obviously the two main metrics that everybody in our industry typically use are CPI and SPI. At consumers, we also do a BEI, which is based on how many tasks you have in your schedule and completing those tasks. And then based on your score, one of those scores, you can then determine whether you're ahead of budget, behind budget, on budget, ahead of schedule, behind schedule, or on schedule. So it's really just kind of a leading indicator of your performance from a project. I would say it's less important on really short projects. For instance, you've got a construction project on a plant where you have an outage. Earned value is going to be less important on those because you're just trying to get the work done in a specific window. That's really what's driving the project. On other projects where you're not in an outage, that's where earned value then brings more value to the project, I would say. So we're measuring all three of those at consumers, but really, when we do our schedule quality checks intermittently, we're looking more at BEI than we are actually at SPI. And the reason is that SPI is really good to get down to the granular level. BEI, you can see if there's a pending problem on the project earlier than you can with SPI. So that's how we're using it.
Yeah, it's like very similar. By the way, we're relying on PEI now, the baseline execution index for our projects, to report to our management, to our project managers. For earned value, going back to earned value, when we developed that system at Fermi, the idea was to report to the project manager so they can see what's going on in their schedule and cost at the same time on a weekly basis, and also to roll it up to management at a high level for the portfolio, and then they can break it down per platform or business units. For the project managers, to be honest with you, didn't work. They were relying more on, at that time we call it slipping activities, how many activities I have slipping from the baseline. But for management, they were relying on SPI and CPI. So the most two important metrics are like where SPI and CPI. We tried to enforce the TCPI, which was like the leading metric to look forward, but we were very busy to fix the problems with SPI and CPI at that time.
One thing I'll add about SPI is unless you're trusting a computer to level out your schedule for you for your baseline, not every task is going to start on its early start date. So you can show like you're behind. So it doesn't replace having a good critical path schedule.
That's a good point.
And which metric do you get beat up on more, SPI or CPI? And I probably know the answer.
SPI, I'd say.
I'll add that our management at our company is less concerned about SPI and CPI and BEI and more concerned about some of our standard milestones slipping. So if you do, and so we then focus on having a good critical path schedule like Jeff had indicated. And once we have that, then they're worried about our asset in service or COD being done at a specific time, and then we have the leading indicators, our construction start, our AFC as well. And so that's, for someone who doesn't really understand SPI, the earned value metrics that we have, that's their way of looking at a date and seeing whether there's a positive or a negative variance and then asking the why, so.
I assume you're still working off a gated process, with the gates and you get progress. Does DTE have that too?
Yeah, we have the gated process, and we also as Nathan said, like we call them in DTE or in PMO key project milestones. So management chose 6 milestones. They say like, okay, I want to know anything happened to these milestones. Once we baseline them, if we need to change them, they have to go back to the change review board to get reported to the change review board to get approved to be changed or delayed. But going back to the metrics also, even we're using PEI, but we know there are some challenges even with the PEI. So whatever metric we choose, there's pros and cons, right? Maybe less complicated than the SPI and CPI. So when we stopped SPI by CPI a couple of years ago, I think 3 years ago, because of the challenges and complication that we had in the process. So we rely more on PEI. But even with PEI, it's simpler metric, but we still have pros and cons. When you count the activity, are you counting all the activities or certain activities that the project managers, the platform are interested in? Are you counting critical path? Because everything in the PEI will be weighted as one, like the same weight for all activities. If you're missing a brief activity versus you're missing a milestone, a design finish or construction finish, they have the same weight in the metric. So the metrics are very challenging.
Do you ever re-baseline based on like so if you use it for forecasting purposes, you've got a trader contractor that's either more productive or less productive than planned, do you re-baseline so your forecasts are accurate, or do you?
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start on that one. In the past, we've re-baselined just to make the schedule look good or whatever, to be honest with you. I mean, it's absolutely nebulous.
Make it green, right?
Now, yeah, I mean, now we're cracking down. It's part of the problem solving that we're doing. What really defines a reason to re-baseline? Otherwise, let's take the negative hit, problem solve that so we can get better as a company. I mean, that's really the approach that we're trying to take as much as possible. So the re-baseline thing is not just to make the schedule look good. We want to be I mean, you guys all know, you've had PMs ask you to, all right, let's do a best case and a worst case like schedule or, and I fight that every single time and just say, let's do a real schedule and then track our performance based on that and learn from it. So that's kind of what we're going through right now. So that was a timely question.
Sorry, just as a follow-up to that, I feel like I've seen more often that they will sandbag their durations early, you know what I mean? So then like they're consistently hitting more aggressive dates than they had been planned, and then you, like, as part of your forecasting, start to suck some of that like fake float out and say, well.
The way that we combat that is we have a formula for calculating contingency on the back end before we hit our major milestones on our particular project. So it prevents our contractors from trying to take that approach. We give them the date, and then in our owner's schedule, we'll add the contingency on the back end so that we've got, whatever fluff we need on the back end for them to meet it. So they really have a lot more float than they know they do, but it's our float, and we get to own it. So that's the way we handle it.
If you're doing a true resource-loaded schedule, there is really no float unless, because every task would be crewed out to add up to the man hours in the estimate.
Unless the estimate's wrong.
What's that?
Unless the estimate's
Yeah,
wrong.
that's what the earned value will tell you, how good your estimate is versus your productivity.
I'm curious, across the board, in major projects or stage gate projects, at what point are you baselining?
So I'll take this one from DTE perspective here. So the first baseline we snap it at the beginning of the project. We have gated process, and then the gate one, we baseline what we call the key project milestone. That these are the milestones that the client or DTE is concerned about. The problem with this approach is, or the challenge I would say, is that most of the time these milestones are imposed on the projects. Like, we want you to meet this date. So we work backward from that date, trying to meet it. And sometimes, unfortunately, the platform or the project manager would know this is very difficult date to meet, and they still commit to to develop the schedule to that date, right? So this is the first baseline. Then if any project would change one of these key project milestones, they have to go back to the change review board. It's attended by the director and sometimes the VPs to get approval to change the milestones. So they will present their case, here's why we're changing the milestones, they get approval, and we re-baseline. The third case is in utilities. We have what we call like the corporate updates, where every few months the company will reforecast or re-baseline the forecast, the cost forecast for the company. They have the 4+8 at the end of April, 4 months actuals, 8 months forecast. So they re-baseline the 8 months, and the 8+4 the same thing on end of August. At these times, we allow also the schedulers to re-baseline based on the corporate updates without, if this is not impacting the key project milestones. They changing stuff between the milestones, we allow the re-baseline just to get the PEI right. But if they're changing the key project milestone, again, they have to go back to CRB. So these are the three situations where we baseline our projects.
Well, you'll re-baseline your schedule just to align your cost forecast, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
You know, there's different types of projects, like sometimes you're working on footings while you're still designing other things, right? So you don't have a baseline for something that's not even thought through yet, 100%. Like if you're doing an outage, yeah, it's ideal to have that baseline a few weeks before you start, right? Everybody knows this is what it's going through because that's a time-sensitive, critical schedule.
Oh, my answer is a little bit more complicated than that, and that is we're internally debating the strategy for rebaselining right now, and that is if we and currently we're baselining, as you know, prior to going through gate 2, which is the design plan is done, the design basis is done, and the front end engineering is done, and those are the three main engineering components. However, we're not capturing how long it takes the engineers to get that scope developed. Now, that's part of the debate. Are we baselining early enough so that we can track the performance of our engineering department? And also, if we baseline too early, how much is the scope going to change as they go through that engineering? And we all know what COVID did to supply chain. So, I mean, that threw all of our projects out of whack when we had any sort of complicated materials that we were trying to procure on those projects. So we're consistently in a debate about when's the appropriate time to baseline. There are some cons about baselining at gate 2 that you may not have a contractor schedule, and we want to capture the performance of that. I mean, at that point, you're just going off of your contractor milestone schedule that you put in your contract with them. So the way that we're doing it is at gate 2, but we're discussing what's optimal moving forward right now.
It was implied earlier, sometimes it's challenging to get the contractors to communicate their progress and invoices. What are some best practices that you've been able to follow to maybe have them communicate the data reflected against your schedule of value so you can consume it into your reporting?
Okay, I think I talked about this.
The fixed price is an
Yeah,
obstacle.
yeah. So when management pushed on, like, okay, we want to implement EVM for the company, and they started like with this wide expectations, like for the whole company. We had existing contractors, right? And we start asking them for the information, and they said, what you're talking about? I'm not giving you my cost per activity, and they start submitting change orders. So we basically pushed back on these change orders. Some contractors were like a little bit nicer. They started giving us more information, but at a higher level. So we were like in the middle, like not getting the details that we wanted, but get higher level details. And then we started on the new contracts. We developed an addendum with their contracts called Earned Value Management Reporting Requirements. So we put all the requirements, what they need to provide us at the beginning when we baseline the project or the schedule, on a weekly basis, the information that we needed from them. So it wasn't an addendum developed with their contracts. So this is what we did.
You gotta do it up front, right?
Yeah, up front.
I've gotten a lot of updates from subcontractors through like just an Excel sheet that has all the activities highlighted, which ones were supposed to be worked on in that reporting period. That seems to work pretty good. We're old school and right on the schedule, fax it over.
I'm going to talk through an example of what my colleague here just talked through. And as we are going through and doing the decommissioning of our Karn plant up in Bay City, as we were getting rid of our coal pile, what our owner's engineer had estimated was 1/10 of our coal pile size. So that immediately created the contractor to remove 10 times the amount of coal that we thought it was going to be. And in addition, dig that part out, which means we're going to have 10x of our fill. We're still going through what we call PCNs, project change notices, and that's blowing our budget right out of the water, but we have to return it to a certain site. So really, I'm going to echo what these two have said. The engineering on the front end to really hone in and get a really accurate scope so that you don't have those change notices throughout the life of your project that increase your budget. It's very important, you know, especially from an earned value standpoint, because the second you get a first change notice that you had not baselined for, because those are outside of your baseline, you know, you're throwing your earned value out of whack at that point.
Another workaround that we use, that just remember what we're talking about this, is to use the concept of the milestone payments to report on earned value management. So instead of using the distribution of the cost, we baseline the milestone payments. However, the challenge with this is like it will be too late when you report if you're on track or not for the milestone payments. So management, when we reported, and sometimes it's millions of dollars. So we didn't hit the milestones, or the contractor didn't hit the milestones. Management with this will blow up like the SPI and CPI. And so what's going on here? Yesterday or last week was green. Say, oh, this contractor missed milestone payments. Why I didn't know about this last week? Why you didn't tell me last week? So this like the milestone payment challenge that we went through for the fixed price contract.
Sorry, Barry has a question online, then I'll go to Don. He wants to know what kind of reporting that you've had success with doing earned value.
What reporting?
Barry, yeah, just what kind of earned value reports that you've been able to provide that have been beneficial for either leadership or for project managers?
For like a outage, I'd do like a daily report. For a major capital project, it'd be a weekly report, just outlining where you're at on the critical path, where your forecasted finish is, where you're at with CPI and SPI by every skilled trade.
Yeah. For us, we were told that it has to be weekly. I pushed to have it monthly to have more accurate earned value reporting for SPI and CPI, because as I mentioned earlier, our cost process is we get the invoices, we get all the actuals the end of the month. So we came up with the estimated actuals and we were reporting weekly for earned value management. Now during the outages, we used to report daily, but not earned value management, scheduled performance and resource hours, not earned value. For earned value, the reports will be including, you know, for each activity, start, finish, planned value, earned value, actual cost, then SPI, CPI, percent complete. So we give like a full line of information. So even if you don't have the SPI and CPI from the information provided on the report, you would also can calculate the SPI and CPI there. So we wanted to be like more transparent with the project manager, with whoever is receiving the information. So they look, if I have SPI is 0.71, they look at plan value, earned value, they say, oh, my plan value is screwed this week, for example. So this is the reporting that we used.
Similar. We're looking at not just at the activity level, but in each of our WBSs and rolling up all the way to the top, what our budgeted cost is for that, whatever we're looking at versus our actual cost versus remaining cost, and reporting out on all of those. I will say this: we're doing this gas well rehab, and the first couple years that we were doing earned value, we realized that we were very aggressive on the front end, and so it's really revised what our work plan is from one year to the next year and how we're laying that plan out. So that specifically, since that was multi-year, it's really helped us revise, but the reporting shed light on that. We wouldn't know until we got to the end of the year, okay, we accomplished our goal, but what kind of struggle did we have on the way to that? So it's revised how we're doing the work, when we're doing the work, and that's another way that we're doing it. On other projects, we're measuring based on our resources. How are our resources, are our contractors performing? Which ones are performing better than others? So we're starting to get into that more generally across the board. I'd have to imagine if I looked in a crystal ball, maybe at some point we might do some sort of contractor feedback. Hey, we've been working with you for 10 years. These first 3 years were good, but the last 7 years, there's room for improvement. But it just gives us more information so that we can manage our work a lot better.
Yes.
Two.
So,
No, you just get one.
So you mentioned the addendums to the contractors stating the requirements up front, which is phenomenal. Did you see a price increase from those contractors based on that? And does the cost of managing a schedule using earned value, because it is extra inputs, is it still worthwhile? Does it give you back what you're putting into it? In what instances is it best to use, I guess, on what?
So for the first part, the price increases. I cannot compare, like I don't have data to compare without the EVM or with the EVM, but I would say yes, probably the price increases. However, we took advantage for that, like we're still in the bidding process, we're still in the negotiation process. It's easier to push these requirements up front instead of going back. Because if you're going back after we sign, that's it. Like it's a change request or change order right away. But the advantage that we took is something that we proposed before. So we have the advantage of negotiation and competitive, pricing from different contractors. The second part about the repeat it again, Don, I'm sorry.
Is the cost outweigh the benefits?
Yeah, the cost versus the benefits. Is it across the board on every project that it's beneficial to use, or are there certain types of projects where it's more beneficial?
Oh yeah, a great question. Yeah, for shorter term, I think less than $1 million, I would say, projects. I don't think earned value add much to reporting or to management. This is from just remember from DTE owner side perspective, where we have projects like renewables and DOs, we're talking about millions of dollars. I think with big projects, I think it's worth it to have the earned value management, to spend that, invest in the resources and training, because it's expensive to implement, right? For nuclear, when I did it for nuclear, yes, because also nuclear projects anyway expensive, so to invest in nuclear, I think it would make sense for the cost-benefit analysis.
I think it depends on your contracting strategy too. If you're got a lump sum general contractor, what are you getting out of it, right? You just want a good schedule that he can maintain.
Yeah, at Consumers, we give each of our projects a project complexity, so 0 to 5. Our major projects are the ones that are 3 and above, so those are the ones that we require cost loading on now moving forward. Like Samir said, zeros and ones, there's really not going to be value to it. That's why we do that complexity rating, so that we have certain requirements that kick in at different complexity levels. And I totally agree with him in terms of all of that, in terms of what you're getting from your contractor. That needs to be determined up front, whether you're putting a section in your contract that covers everything that you want in there. And then it becomes a negotiation. We've had contractors that come back to us and even say, we don't want to employ a scheduler. Okay, well, that's part of your bid needs to include that, or you're not going to be considered for this job. So it's part of the negotiation at that point.
Have you been able to, oh, go ahead.
He raises his hand, he goes first.
Yeah.
Follow the rules, Phil.
I guess I've always, the process for most owners is you go out to the contracting community, they provide you a schedule, and they cost load it. So I guess my whole thing is, what kind of scrutiny do you have when you get that initial baseline schedule from them? And what sort of stuff do your internal people do to kind of figure out if this is the right thing along the whole thing? Are they front-end loading? They got some games they're playing in here? Maybe we'll start with Jeff and work your way over. How do you?
I think it would just take scheduling experience and know how to build to know if the schedule is worth anything.
But you hate to go 3/4 or halfway in and all of a sudden there's something really wrong and nobody really caught it at the front end. How do you eliminate that?
Yeah, I'm not sure about.
You just trust and hopefully verify?
Yeah, I trust and verify. The first thing in my organization, the first thing we would ask, I wouldn't accept PDF files. Like they would provide the PDF schedule, right? It's like if it's 20 pages or 100 page schedule, how would the schedule know if this is a good schedule or not? Mm-hmm. We would ask for the native file. If it's P6 or Microsoft, we import in our system and we start looking first the critical path, open ends, high duration, like how many activities have like more than 50 days of duration, the floats, we look at everything and start.
But maybe you still don't know. Maybe I want to throw it to the audience for folks that kind of review this stuff and maybe give some suggestions to the owner on how you could eliminate some of that stuff when you're getting a faulty schedule potentially from a contractor.
I'll take a stab at it.
Go ahead.
First. Yes. So the way that we're doing it is we're putting an RFP out after we've gotten a certain, the engineering done. Then we expect a bid form from the contractor broken down with all of the different scope bulletins that we have called out. Then they need to take that bid form and build out a schedule with appropriate WBS headers, and that's how we're assessing their initial schedule. After that, and we've determined which contractor we're going to, and we score them on all of that, their price that they're bidding against, the level of their technical abilities. We've got a whole scorecard of how we're scoring them. Then we get the native file, we run a schedule quality check. Typically it's like the 14-point DCIM, and we'll be able to determine the holes in it. But their bid form should really lead to a schedule of values, and their schedule of values should then lead to the creation of their schedule in terms of that. So you really have a good idea of how much effort they've put into it, because we've gotten schedules that are proposed schedules from a bidding contractor that you just know they're never going to be able to do a cost loaded schedule for the entire duration of the project unless they hire a contracting house. Or you'll know right off the bat, you'll see one and you'll be like, okay, I have very little concern. The other thing we ask for is the resume of the scheduler or the project controls person. And we assess that as part of our technical evaluation as well.
I'm sure they put somebody in there who's never scheduled before.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. One thing I would like to add here, Bill, and what Nathan just said and Jeff, is after it passes like the integrity, we call it integrity check, we move it now to before the baseline. In our process, at least, we require that the scheduler review it with the project team, and we call for planning and scheduling meeting, kickoff meeting. So they have to, the whole team get together, review the whole schedule. This is after it passed the integrity check. And we have to be consistent. Like a few years ago, we developed what we call a baseline checklist. For baseline schedule checklist. So they have to go through each item, make sure that they asked all the, the mandatory or required questions to make sure that we have all the scope and it makes sense for the project team before we baseline it. So.
I've done that same sort of thing. A couple of clients that I've worked for call them interactive planning sessions, where you kind of have everybody in the room, stakeholders and all the contractors, subs included, and walk through all the line items by an area or whatever. Other swim lanes, if you will, like systems of ductwork or piping systems or something like that. Kind of go through it like that before everybody signs off on a baseline.
I wish it's perfect like how we say it, okay? But sometimes, people will just sign the baseline checklist and call it done without even reviewing the schedule, so.
You can go through all that scrutiny. Have you ever been burned?
Yes.
Oh.
Then you bring Jim in.
I was gonna say, Jeff Taylor's answer was hire a good schedule consultant. If you didn't understand what Jeff said.
Your question is a good one. One of the things that we've wrestled with is, companies like yourself, you've built a history in the past of similar projects, and we also just provide another baseline to say similar projects in the past took this long. What is this project? And we compare, and so we help our clients harvest their history to project. And just another check. We do the quality checks that you talked about, but it's a nice way of, looking at your actuals from the past to say what's
Exactly.
reasonable, and it's worthwhile.
That's one of the challenges we're working through right now with our renewables projects, because we don't have the history of completing those right now to be able to build a template with historical data. But we could do it on gas and substations and electrical lines overhead all day long in our sleep, because we've done a ton of those projects. But it's the challenge that we're working through right now.
The same challenge. We have challenges in the renewable space. We're currently actually refining or rebuilding our templates for renewables because we don't have that history of in gas distribution operation. We have standard template. It's a living document. Every time we learn something, we go back to the templates and update the templates.
Have you been able to take the earned value management stuff that you're working on and push it to your strategic planning or portfolio levels when it comes to like long-term forecasting in terms of like budgetary stuff? 'Cause I've seen a lot of times like I'll get like these long-term forecasts from a strategic group, and they'll just be like absurd in the terms of dollars that are being spent versus what current levels are. Have you been able to like kind of rein that practice in at all using UVM?
You're talking like a department level earned value management. I'm going to say no from our perspective right now, but the potential is there to be able to. I mean, we have the data. It's just getting it into strategy's hands, and I don't know how well they would be at understanding it. So there's going to be some training involved in that as well. But that is an opportunity, and I just don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, the same for us.
Good question.
We didn't take it to the long-term planning or strategic purposes. We were very busy, doing it at the project level and the platform level, but we didn't get to the point where we're looking at from strategy department or planning department, long-term planning department.
I think right now from the strategy standpoint is we get from our executive board, you're going to spend X amount of dollars that we're planning on for the year. How do you want to spend that? What's the best way to spend that? What are our worst assets that we need to fix? What are assets that we need to build to maintain? So that's kind of how our strategy is looking at it right now. But how much they're looking at historical information. Okay, we build a gas plant, it's 25 years now, we know the lifespan of a gas plant is 30 years. I'm just throwing hypothetical numbers out. So we know we're gonna have to invest some money into that. So a certain percentage of that X dollars that we're spending for the year is we're gonna set aside for whatever repairs that we need on a certain plant or something. And then we may need to go build a solar field. How much is that gonna cost? And yes, I know from our perspective, our spend over the next 5 years is going to increase greatly. So they're not just looking at a 5-year or 1-year plan. Our leadership is rolling out a 10-year plan right now. So that's kind of what they're looking at. But it's interesting, they bring that up, like, how are we using our earned value that we're finding out in terms of what use could strategy have for that? I think there's a lot of use for it.
What are you seeing with productivity with the baby boom generation leaving, and now we've got Gen Y and Z coming in? Is there a productivity gap that you're seeing in your schedules? And then how are you going to pay for all these tariffs and stuff?
You know, I have seen a very large productivity bust on a project. It had to do with a skilled trade. I want to say it was insulators. It was either way underestimated or the guys were playing cards half the day. So it came to be like, we need to fix this problem, and that was an instance where we found out that they had a lot more scaffolding to do than that was planned, and that they missed a lot of scaffold. So you kind of had to take into consideration going forward, like, these guys are gonna need more time to do this stuff or have more people.
I would say from our perspective, we're not really measuring the demographics like that to that detailed level of.
Not just demographic, but just are you seeing some trends that are coming along?
It's more on a per contractor basis. We can understand the contractor performance, and then, hey, next time we have a job that they're bidding on, you know, we're doing our diligence in terms of documenting lessons learned, and we rarely get feedback from owner's perspective on how their subcontractors are doing. It's all the general contractor's responsibility. They're incorporating their subcontractor schedule into theirs. So we're measuring their performance based off of that as well. So I haven't really thought about the age trend like your question is, but
deal with that estimating side all the time.
Yeah.
I try to push management to say you got to put something in there for it. They say I can't afford it. It's a reality. So how are you gonna pay for it?
There was a really interesting meeting I went to last year at the conference, at the national conference, that said that it's not just maybe new productivity from the young group, but it's also young engineers and young designers and young estimators as well that are not as experienced as well. So it might not be a productivity thing, it might just be bad scoping or bad estimating from young people coming in as well. So,
but the benefit of having that younger generation is that, I will say this, as our technologies in our industries are changing, they're on the leading edge of a lot of that stuff, more than us in the older generation, and also Krebs' generation is giving them credit.
There's almost no one left.
Right.
But thanks for noticing.
thanks. Any last question? One last question, if anyone has anything, we'll wrap it up. You good? Awesome. Well, thank you again to the panel. You guys did awesome. I appreciate you guys taking your time and putting yourselves in front of everyone. So I thought it was a great meeting. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, we need to bounce ideas off.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.